Hello, rock and rollers. Welcome to the number 10 edition of the ElectroJet Rock Show. Tonight, we're going to get into it with a bit of a discussion on the topic of greatest female vocalist of all time. So my name is Jett Electro. I'm coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. And I also have with me my esteemed co-host, Professor Electro, coming to you from Los Angeles, California.
What's up, rock and rollers? Welcome back again.
All right. Well, it's great to have you with us, Professor. Yeah, this was, we were thinking about what we were going to do for this show, and Professor sprung this one on me, so we're going to do the greatest female vocalist in rock of all time. I'm going to start off with Aretha Franklin, just because of her power and her technique, and yeah, she's just a phenomenal singer. So, yeah, technique, power, showmanship on stage, really good performer live. That's who's going to be my number one.
Okay, yeah, I can't argue with that. Aretha. Yeah, so we were looking for the 1970s and 80s best rock singers, but you got to include Aretha in there just because there's some crossover there between soul and pop and rock. They're all kind of merged together, and she could do all of them, so that's great. My first choice is actually going to be Ann Wilson of Heart. She's a choice that I think a lot of people think of when you think of female rockers. Her and her sister, Nancy Wilson, who's also a pretty good singer, but not of Ann's caliber. And, you know, Ann was always kind of a Zeppelin fan. She does a lot of Zeppelin covers, does a pretty good one of Stairway to Heaven. And, in fact, the guys in Zeppelin, Robert Plant, loves her version. But, you know, early on in the 70s, she had those big hits, Crazy on You and Magic Man, and then later in the 80s with that 1985 Ron Nevison album that was done at the record plant, their 8th album, self-titled, that had Alone. Alone was on before that, but they had Looks Could Kill, What About Love? You know, just a great, incredible singer with I think like a 3.5 octave range, and even lately, she can still hit it, but I would say like right around the 2010, you can listen on YouTube. There's a ton of live cuts of her doing just incredible live performances where she still hits the notes. You know, sometimes she's got to back off a little bit to be ready for the next show, but still just incredible range, incredible power. Yeah, Ann Wilson of Heart. That's my first choice.
Very good one, Professor. Outstanding. Well, I'm going to have to go with the two girls from the band ABBA. You don't really think of them as a rock band, but they totally rock. So I'm going to have to go with those two. What the one girl, Jett, doesn't really have in her voice on the low note side of thing, Frida makes up for that, and vice versa. They're sort of like a yin and yang. So I'm going to put them in as my second choice. Both the girls from ABBA, phenomenal, and also body of work, and the sound, their sound of their voices, just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, very complimentary, those two, like you said, and they really work together. And maybe not exactly rock, probably a little more on the pop side, but they could rock also. There's definitely a rock edge to some of their songs, and yeah, great singers both. For my second choice, I'm going to go with Pat Benatar. Even though at times she's not my favorite singer, I got to say, there's some songs that she does where she just sounds incredible. Fire and Ice, Hell is for Children, Promises in the Dark. She's got an incredible range, and like Ann Wilson, she still could hit the notes, and I would say up until about 5 or 10 years ago, could really hit the stuff. I mean, from what I understood, she had a 4.5 to 5 octave range. And for comparison, Freddie Mercury only had about a 3.5, and he's still considered a great singer. So, Pat Benatar, that's my second choice. And she's able to stay married to the guitar player in her band all this time. That's pretty amazing also. So, that's also, she was, if I remember right, she was actually accepted to Juilliard but she turned it down to get into rock and roll. So, yeah, second choice, Pat Benatar.
Very good one, Professor. That's a great one. All right, my next one I'm going to have to go with, you don't really think of her so much of as a 70s or 80s, although she was active in the 70s and 80s and probably had hits in both. Her influence on rock, and I'm sure she had some things in there in the 70s, is Diana Ross from the Supremes, lead vocalist of the Supremes. That stuff is phenomenal, influenced a lot of rock and roll. She rocks, the whole band rocks. So maybe a little bit of a stretch there for as far as rock and roll singers, but a lot of that stuff, it is basically rock and roll. It's just not, it's got a little more swing to it, and it's a little more syrupy, maybe a little more flowery, but that's what makes it really nice. And it swings really good. And yeah, Diana Ross is a phenomenal lead singer, so I'm going to go with her.
Yeah, I think we're also looking at, more the quality of the singer than necessarily is it defined as rock. And from that era, you got to say that Diana Ross is going to be right up there with the rest of them. So for my next choice, my third choice, I had Tina Turner. So in a similar way, Tina Turner's kind of, started off more maybe as a soul or R&B singer, but in the mid-'80s, she had a resurgence in her career. I remember she had an album like in the mid-'80s, 1984, 85, things called Private Dancer, and What's Love Got to Do with It, and a few other songs on there. But that was huge for her. In fact, if I remember right, she was like in her mid-40s, and she was like one of the oldest women to be on the, I think in the top of the Billboard charts at that age, at that time. And she could rock it. She could hit the notes. She had power, and she's a great performer, a great on-stage presence. And she did a lot of collaborating, I think, with a lot of other musicians, too. I seem to remember It's Only Love with Bryan Adams. There's a live version of that. Man, both of them sound really good together. I'm not a huge Bryan Adams fan. I know he was a great songwriter, but that duo with that duet with the two of them live is quite good. It's worth looking at. I think she was also in The Who's Tommy in 1975 film, and she did soundtracks. I think the one for Thunderdome, I think that was later in the 90s. But anyway, that's my fourth choice, Tina Turner.
That's a great one. Yeah. She definitely rocks too. I love that Nutbush City Limits song and all that. That's definitely some rock and roll going on there. Yeah, she's cool, man. Outstanding choice, Professor. All right. Well, I was struggling with these, so I'm going to have to just go with my who I grew up with and influenced me a lot. And she actually she can rock pretty good, and that would have to be Cher. Because of also her television show, Sonny and Cher. Did you ever watch that stuff, Professor?
I did, yeah. Great singer also, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, maybe not my favorite cup of tea, her vocal sound-wise, but, I mean, she did that show, like every week they put out another one. She's singing live on, they're recording it as they go. So, man, that's pretty gnarly. You got to be able to do that, all that pressure. And then, they had a string of great hit singles on the radio right when I was really starting to get into rock and roll, and they rock pretty hard. So, yeah, that's who I'm going to go with as my number 4 pick is Cher.
Okay, yeah, great choice. Huge icon, and again, seems like every decade she had hit songs. So a lot of huge body of work there. Hard to deny that. Well, my fourth choice is a little out of the box because I don't think that her band was ever super successful, but I'm going to pick Janet Gardner of Vixen. I think that she had a real good edge and was quite good live, and I think she could play guitar also, and had good stage presence, and the other thing I got to say is she was obviously writing her material where some of the other female pop singers at that time, they had songwriters. So and she was actually a true rocker. Definitely they were kind of modeled as almost like a female Motley Crue kind of, or somewhat in the hair metal genre. Some people would put him in there. But there's I think she did, I have to correct myself, she did have Richard Marx, I think, doing some songwriter, collaborating with her, and the guitar player in Vixen. But there's a live video from, it was an MTV Spring Break special, something like that, from Florida in the mid-'80s, where it's them playing live. Wow. Really, man, it's a great performance for playing live. And you listen to her singing, man, there's not one note off. Sounds great. So that's my fourth pick, Janet Gardner Vixen.
Wow, that's a really great one, Professor, because mainly, she's in the rock context a lot more than the ones that I'm picking right now. Yeah, and I saw she can still do it, too. I saw Vixen play probably, I think it was about 2019 or something, at the D parking lot stage. They sounded phenomenal. So, yeah, Janice's voice was still it was better than it's ever been. I can say that.
Well,
okay.
Still do.
Yeah, so here's my last one. Very hard to pick, but I think I'm going to have to go with Linda Ronstadt. What do you think of that one, Professor?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an icon also. And it's in that era.
Yeah, the reason I'm gonna pick her, I could have picked maybe another one or two that I had on my list, but I'm just going to go with her because in the early 70s she was very influential, had a very signature sound. She's half German and half Mexican, I do believe, so she's got that Mexican kind of, a little bit of that mariachi kind of sound, that vibrato on there, which for back then is really cool. Yeah, it's still really cool. It's very signature sound. Her pitch is great, power is great, tone's great, dynamics great. She's got some chops. Lots of cool songs I grew up with on the radio she sang. Let's see, for example, what's that one? When Will I Be Loved? That was on the radio a lot. Even Blue Bayou, she hit some crazy notes in that. So, yeah, it's going to be my number 5 for tonight, Linda Ronstadt.
You're no good, you're no good, you're no good.
Yep, that one too.
Yes. But she was good. She was great. So, okay, yeah. Great choice there, J.E. So for my last pick, I'm going to go with another one, a little out of the box. Some of you may not have even heard of her, but her name is Dale Kranz. And she was married to Gary Rossington, who unfortunately just passed away somewhat recently, from Leonard Skinner. She was one of the backup singers. I think they were called the Honkettes. They were the backup singers for Leonard Skinner, especially I think in their later years. And then she was a lead vocalist in a band called Rossington Collins, which was an early kind of a reformation of the Leonard Skinner band before they became the, Leonard Skinner 2 with Johnny Van Zandt on vocals. But I think she's actually a way better singer than Johnny Van Zandt. And they only put out a couple albums, but one in particular that's really good, that has a number of different really good songs that showcase her voice. I think it was the first album. I don't know. I think it's self-titled. And there's a song called Don't Misunderstand Me and One Good Man and 3 Times As Bad. I think, the name of the album, I think, was Anytime, Anyplace, Anywhere, I think was the name of the album. But Dale Kranz, just an incredible, very underrated singer, really gritty, had kind of almost like a Janis Joplin edge to her voice, but maybe even, I don't want to say more range than Janis, but, maybe more usable range. And the only reason I left Janis off this list was she passed away in 1970. We're kind of going for 70s and 80s. And it was definitely hard because I thought about Whitney Houston because she was getting going in the 80s.
Oh, phenomenal.
The reason I left, it was hard because she's an incredible, as a singer, she's probably one of the best, if not the best, technically. But she didn't write a lot of her own. Yeah, she didn't write a lot of her own stuff. So that was especially in the 80s. So it was hard for me to go with Whitney. So. Yeah, Dale Kranz of Rossington Collins, definitely worth a listen if you've never heard her. I actually saw Rossington Collins, I believe, at the Country Club in the 80s, and wow, they were phenomenal. She was in particular was great live. So That's my last choice. Number 5, Dale Kranz.
Wow, Professor, that's a outside choice, but that's a great one. Yeah, I got to check her out. Her work on with her singing. What did she sing on? She sang on with Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah, she was one of the backup singers. Later on, in let's say the second half of Lynyrd Skynyrd's early career.
Yeah, I got to check her out. So, what do you think? It's about time to sign off.
I think it's about that time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jett Electro signing off for the ElectroJet Rock Show, along with my esteemed co-host, Professor Electro. So we're going to sign off with that. Rock and roll!
Rock and roll! Don't forget to like and subscribe, kids.